All right. My wife is a type 2 diabetic. Recent blood tests show albumin, which is protein in the urine. The medical folks say it means stage 2 kidney failure. Any opinion on this recommendation and for healthy kidneys? So again, if we think about this from what I said, if you're essentially type 2 diabetes means you have too much sugar in your blood. That's what they're calling it. So the question then is, how did you end up with keeping so much sugar in the blood? Now here you also get into the question of, is this a therapeutic strategy? In other words, you're keeping the sugar in the blood to make an effect, or is it just that you say eat too much sugar or your tissues have been poisoned and they can't take it up? So I would say that the way to think about this is, the important thing is how much sugar, glucose that is actually in the cells/tissues. Because once you have, say, excessive glucose sugar in your cells and tissues, then it interferes with the protein folding and the osmotic balance. And so it changes the character of your gels. And that's going to change how much energy you produce and cause lots of other problems. So the last thing the body wants is to end up with too much sugar inside the tissues. So what does it do? It builds a barrier, a boundary around the tissues and cells to keep the sugar out. And we call that insulin resistance, because it's the insulin that's binding to the gels that essentially helps the sugar become incorporated into the gels. So once that happens too much, it interferes with the integrity of the gels, and the body doesn't want that, so it builds a barrier, and so that means that this excessive sugar is staying in the blood. And that's the therapeutic response. So then inevitably the sugar goes up in the blood, and we call that a disease called type 2 diabetes, when really it was just probably either a poisoning of the tissues, which interfered with the way they handle the sugar, or there could have been just too much sugar. And so if you see it like that, then you could you could address both of those by doing, say, for instance, a fast, which will help with the detoxification, and it will also lower the sugar input. And it turns out that then if there's less sugar, glucose going into the cells, because there's less sugar, then you don't need to protect yourself, and the sugar will go down in the blood, and then you will be cured of, if you want to use that word, of type 2 diabetes, and the kidneys will go back to normal. And then you can start eating more like nourishing traditions with low carbohydrates and do the appropriate detoxification. And you will never have type 2 diabetes again. And that works over and over again.